Yes.
From Till Italy? No.
No.
No. Wait, you work for the information lab as well, right? Yes. Okay. Hello. Nice
How are you?
to see you again.
Good to see you.
Stefana. You don't know me though.
Yes, I do. I do. Can't remember your name. Sorry.
It's okay. I can't remember your name.
Pablo.
Yes. Okay. Of course, Pablo. The second, the other one.
And your name was?
Stefana. You brought your son or daughter to school, like to the DS, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. That was in that.
School.
Yeah. Over there. Thank you.
Okay, hello everyone, welcome to London Tableau User Group. By my reckoning this is our third or fourth of the year, but it's our first one starting in daylight, so summer's on its way. Yes. Is it anyone's first time at a user group tonight? Excellent, welcome. Everyone else, learn those faces, go and speak to them. So London Tableau User Group is run by the five of us on screen. We've got Paul Chapman, who was here to kick off but has had to run away. We've got Pablo, who is at the back filming tonight. We've got Sarah Bartlett in the corner over there. We've got David in the doorway. Oh, stopping everyone leaving, I guess. And you've got myself. We are Tableau fans, we are not Tableau employees. We do this out of the goodness of our hearts and the love of data. But we're really excited to have you all here tonight, and we're also super excited to have the two Andys here tonight.
Woo. I love the enthusiasm.
Do it again.
So all the way from the north, we've got Andy Kirk, a freelance database specialist. They'll do their own intros later, so I'm not going to go into too much detail. And from all the way from Tableau, we have Andy Cotgrave. He is Chief Technical Evangelist here at Tableau. And without further ado, we're going to flip straight into this version.
Yeah, go ahead.
We're going to go straight into the battle. So, I was going to try and do an American accent, but this is going to go bad. In the red corner, we have Andy Kirk. In the blue corner, we have Andy Cotgrave. We have 6 rounds of debate of their choosing, and a final defend the indefensible. Now, both Andys have prepared for the first 6 ahead of schedule, and they have their positions ready to go. They may not necessarily agree with everything that they are putting forward tonight, but in the art of a true debate, they're going to go for it. So please don't judge them personally if you don't necessarily agree with everything they say. I am here as debate moderator tonight, so I am here to keep them on their toes, play devil's advocate if necessary, keep it on time, and keep it light. This is a battle, but we want to stay friends afterwards. If you have questions or comments, we will be checking the Twitter. Sarah over there is our social media expert for this evening and all of time. So she will be keeping up to date on Twitter. Please use the hashtags LondonTug and hashtag DataVizDebate. That's Viz with a Z, I guess?
With a Z.
With a Z. We will do our best to keep going back to it, but in the interest of getting Andy Kirk back to the north tonight, we do have to run on a tight schedule. So apologies.
My passport expires myself.
Kick him out. I'm from the north as well. I don't know why I'm joking. Oh, bad times. We will be going for audience participation throughout the evening, but for those of you on the line, please do tweet along. We will try and get to as many as we can. Now, audience participation that everyone can join in, we do have a vote. In the interest of a battle, there has to be a winner, right? So, if you head to kahoot.it, it should ask you for a pin. The pin is on screen. If you enter that, you'll need to enter your name, and then you'll be ready to vote as we go through the rounds. For those of you online, you can also do this, so please do join in. We want as many votes as possible, and we will be crowning a winner at the end of the evening.
What's the prize?
Eternal glory.
A round of applause.
Eternal glory.
Well, it was not the eternal. Some glory. Short-lived glory. Okay. Has everyone got the Kahoot details? We will be putting them back on screen. I'm going to take that as a yes. Oh, the Wi-Fi password. Sarah?
Data conductor. Capital D, capital C.
Data conductor.
With a capital D and a capital C.
Capital D, capital C.
Is that what you want? Yeah. Right, sorry.
Okay, without further ado, I will just take a seat and Andy's can battle.
All right. Good evening and welcome. Thank you ever so much. Yes, thank you. That's a strong backing already, Andy.
I
I think
see.
we're fine. So that's me. This is me. So I'm a freelance database specialist based in Leeds, England, and I get involved in lots of different things, whether it's teaching, training courses, writing books. Oh, and there's a new book coming out. I should mention it really. There's a second edition of my book that came out in 2016. This is due in a couple of months, start of July. Database, a handbook for data-driven design, published by Sage. So yes, you probably should get that, I think. So yeah, write books, do training courses, do consultancy work, do some work with Arsenal Football Club. I'm a Liverpool fan. Bit of tension there, so that's okay. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. I've been to quite a few tabloid groups around Britain and around the world actually. I've been fortunate to be quite a few, so it's a great pleasure to be back in battle with Mr. Cotgrave. We've done 2 of these, I think, on webinars remotely, but now we're in person, so it just raises the stakes. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Andy. All right, hi everybody. I'm Andy Cotgrave. Nice to meet you all. I wrote the second best book on data visualization on the market. Which one's the best then? I don't know. Anyway, my name's Andy Cotgrave. I'm technical evangelist at Tableau. My job is to enthuse people about the mission to help people see and understand data and get them using Tableau. Hurrah! It's been amazing. I've been using Tableau for 11 years. I was a customer in Tableau version 3.5. Now, I was at a presentation at Just Eat this afternoon, and I was in front of, I think, the youngest audience ever. And I'll do it again. Was anybody still at school in 2008? Yeah, wow. Anyway, you guys are the next generation, right? Brilliant, right? You know, us old guys, it's time for us to maybe sail off into the sunset. And everyone, you know, you've got a great future ahead of you. Thank you, everybody, for coming. That's me. Are we ready to start? I believe we are. So, the bar chart race is just a passing fad. I believe The case against the bar chart race, no, against this statement, is Mr. Andy Kirk.
Thank you very much. So, in a short while, Mr. Cotgreave's just seated there. He'll be telling you that this is a gimmick. This is something that's effectively today's fad, that's tomorrow's fish and chip paper. This was raised by Sarah, so thank you to Sarah for raising this as a key debating point. So I'm in favour of this. I think the bar chart races that we've seen emerge over the last couple of months are a good thing, are a thing that's actually more than just a passing fad, they're a permanent thing. For those of you who are not familiar with what we are talking about, you might have seen a few on Twitter, and these are these dynamic animated bar charts that show change over time of different values. If I just jump onto this, it should bring up the example you see there, which was effectively, in my sense, this was effectively patient zero. This was the first one that seemed to go wild on the web. I'm going to jump because it takes a couple of minutes, which may not be an issue with the method itself, but anyway. But yeah, when you get to 2012, you see Apple rising, you see Facebook emerging very shortly, somewhere on this list. You see Google going big at the top. You see the range of values expanding. I sound a bit like Hans Rosling right now. You've got Toyota, and then you've got some dropping. The ones that are dropping are interested in see you later, BMW. Oh, you're back up there. So what you've got here is a dynamic story. It's a race. Why do we watch races? We watch races because of the process, of the journey, of the battle, the ebb and flow. As I've just established, as a Liverpool fan, I know more than most after last night's match that it's not always about the outcome, it's about the journey. Enjoy the process. And like most dynamic displays, like speedometers in the car, it's not so much about a destination, it's about the journey. It's about where are we now, what is happening now, and where's it come from, where's it been? So let me just get back to the slide deck. And one of the things about the bar chart race that I think has really helped it move beyond just this momentary thing is work from people like John Byrne Murdoch, who not only took the concept forward with his own application. This is one that plots the populous cities over time, going back to the 1500s. But he also shared an observable workbook to let others recreate. And as you can see in the figures that show the sort of virality of this tweet, there's also a good ratio of people who commented, who responded, who asked questions about how do you do this? How can I do this? How can I take this forward? And this is an example of something that I think is, in a broader sense, is just the idea of sharing skills, sharing techniques, about enabling people who've got the passion to recreate something, even if they only ever create once. It just gets that bug, it gets that sense of motivation to continue experimenting and trying things out in visualization. Of course, it is very dependent on the data you've got. If you've got data that's chaotic and it's rapidly changing, well, the animation would never work. And animation in general doesn't work with chaotic data. But the slow, fluid dynamics of change that you see in these animations really lends itself to this notion of a race that you can follow and track. It's also led to be an inspiration for other developers to take on this notion of race. This is Josh Katz, one of the most talented developers out there, who was, he's the guy who's behind the dialect quiz map that some of you may have taken part in recently. Josh has developed the same notion, but now it's rather than a bar chart, it's these bump charts to show the notion of a race playing back the Grand Prix. So this is the Chinese Grand Prix. I won't play the video for now, but it's a technique that works so well for that notion of how do you track the ebb and flow of a race in Formula One. Again, it's a variation on the theme, but this is an animation about basketball. A guy called Andrew Garcia Phillips, really talented developer again. He's created what you might call Marimekko slope graph races, where during the course of a basketball match, he plots which players have contributed the most points to the overall tally, and then at every quarter you get a little ghost that shows you where the lead was at the quarter and half, each quarter mark. So it's not the core bar chart race, but it's inspiring people to think outside the box and to take that seed of an idea and take it forward. And I've done my own inspiration, again, just trying to make sense of the stress of being a Liverpool fan. This is a slope graph showing City versus Liverpool, relative points across the season. The red bars indicate when Liverpool were ahead, and the blue bars when City were ahead. And it just needs to go back to red if it could for the next fucking game. But we can now see this sort of story emerge. Now in this case, of course, a little bit of cheating. There's a history, there's a trail. But nevertheless, this notion of following a race, I think, is a really inspirational technique. And whether the bar chart race survives, it will supplant ideas and techniques in people and move their own capabilities forward. So I think it's very clear that this is not a gimmick, it's not a passing fad, but let's hear an alternative perspective. The wrong perspective.
Yeah, if you want to. Mr. Kirk, thank you very much. As a point of order, the motion is the bar chart race is a passing fad. It may inspire many brilliant charts, but the motion is about the bar chart race.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, the bar chart race is the fidget spinner of Data. Remember 2 years ago, we were fascinated by this thing because it span around. Wow, look, it's moving fast. And we all bought thousands of these things. And we were fascinated. And we got to the end of 2017 and thought, was that constructive time well spent? No, it wasn't. Let me show you why I think the same is true of a bar chart. What are they called? Bar chart races. They should have been a line chart. Every single one. I'll preview with an example. Here's a bar chart race. Let's watch. In fact, Andy said it himself. Let's watch some of it. Because if you watch an entire bar chart race, you are giving away a big amount of time in your life. This one is Olympic medals from 1896 to 2016. And here we go. This is Summer Olympic total medals. There's a big blue chart. There's a big blue bar at the top. There's a red bar. Oh, the red bar's got bigger. But how much did it get bigger, right? It got bigger by quite a lot, but how much we don't know. In what year did it get bigger? Well, now I've got to go and look somewhere else on this thing to actually find out what year it is. And by the time I've looked down here at the bottom right, whoa, I missed, there was a red bar that moved there. But now I go and look at the red bar, and I'm like, well, why is that happening? And something's happening here. You are watching this animation transfixed, like a zombie watching TV, and yet not retaining any insight that you can take moving forwards. The bar chart race is a fidget spinner. It should have been a line chart. Let me switch to Tableau. Here is the same data presented in a line chart. The one we just saw is 2 minutes 58 seconds long. In preparation for this talk, I went to Data is Beautiful on Reddit and watched about, well, all the bar chart races that are flooding that subreddit. It's hours of time, and once you've seen 5 bars spinning, they all blur to the same. So here we go, we've got Olympic medal data here. I can see, you've all already seen, the cumulative line of the US has been ahead, and it's going to have been ahead all the way to 2016 if you watched 3 minutes of that bar chart race. But what you can't see in a bar chart race is peaks and troughs. At the bottom is the number of medals in that individual Olympics. In 1984, the Russians weren't there, the Olympics was in Los Angeles, the USA dominated. I've just given you 2 insights in a matter of seconds. We can look at GB, compare that to the US, and again we can see GB has always been in second, but what you can't see, well, you might have noticed it at 1908, but if you were very lucky. Look, in 1908 we beat the US, that was the only time we won. Are there any Australians in the audience? Hey Sophie, couple. So Australia likes to portray itself as a supreme sporting nation. Right, but now look at the green. Well, I'm afraid, Australia, you were always below us in cumulative medals, and the only time you really dominated was in 2000 when you had your own Olympics in Sydney, after which you kind of dropped down, back to number 7. Good job. All of that, not to insult the Australians, but you know, but I just did, sorry. But my point is, a line chart is really, really fast. If we are trying to actually get insight out of data, then we need to go to line charts. This is the fidget spinner popularity track. By the end of this year, we might have inspired a whole new path of inspiration, but the bar chart race itself is a fad, and I'll finish with this video, which is a bar chart race, which is how I predict bar chart races are going to evolve over the next year. So this is my prediction for what is the most popular chart in the next year. Here they come. They're going to have that moment, and then that's it. And then there will be, towards the end of the year, a dead cat bounce, right? Ladies and gentlemen, the bar chart race is the fidget spinner of Data.
Okay, thank you, Andy. So we now have the opportunity for a bit of interaction. So is anyone now joining Andy Kirk? That the bar chart race is not a fad, and would anyone like to raise a rebuttal? No, everyone thinks
Quite
Andy
clear.
Kirk did a perfect job. Okay, how about for Andy Cotgreve that it is in fact just a fad? Anyone have any points to add? Okay, I'm coming over with a mic. Everyone's now sitting on their hands. Okay, in which case, is it possible to back the screen?
You have someone here.
Ah, aha.
So Andy, the question
Can we
was...
come to you with a mic? Sorry.
Hi, Andy, Joe Parker, I'm a big fan.
Thanks. Which Andy are you a fan of?
You.
Okay.
Well, no, I've got a question for you. Because
So
the
you're a
bar
big fan of
chart,
him?
the question was, the bar chart race is just a passing fad, not is there anything better than a bar chart? And you showed a line chart as being better, which I think is fair, but it doesn't prove that the bar chart race is a passing fad, it just proves that there are alternatives.
Alright?
It's a very strong
It's a very strong point, Mr. Clark. What I'm saying is, if you go to Data is Beautiful, everyone's building bar chart races. They are having their deserved moment in the spotlight, but eventually we'll think, I didn't retain any insight from
But
it.
you've spent hours watching them, you said.
Only, it's time I'm not getting back, was my feeling about that. Just to get angry, yeah.
Any other questions?
Sorry, what?
Bear with us just a second.
Yeah, Laura, there's something wrong with Kahoot.
Andy, did you break Kahoot? Did you see the numbers?
Okay. We can do this. We can restart Kahoot. So apologies to everyone that has already logged into Kahoot. We are... going to restart now. So for everyone that's already entered a pin, can you come out of that and go back in with this new pin?
And the online
Excellent. We can see people joining. Okay, I'm going to give everyone a couple of seconds to join. In the meantime, just to recap, we had Andy Kirk commenting on the virality of the bar chart race, that it is not a passing fad, it is simply inspiration, and animation lends itself to smooth movements that you can track with the eye. For the rebuttal, we had Andy Kirk demonstrating that they are in fact fidget spinners.
That was copper.
Oh, sorry, apologies. The other Andy. Saying that they are in fact a waste of time, impossible to retain information from, and there are much better ways to gain insight. Okay, we're up to 82. Has anyone not joined and is still trying?
We have 99 registration.
Okay. Well, for anyone else, we've got about 30 seconds.
Dun, 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 dun.
Oh, the answers are coming in.
Tune.
Okay, so we've nearly got all of them. About 5 people not yet voted. Sitting on the fence. We've got 3 seconds left for that last person that's not decided. There we go.
Oh, yes!
Okay, so taking round 1 is Andy Cotgreve. I honestly think it's because he brought a toy in. I'm not gonna lie.
That's, you gotta win the crowd.
We are a visual audience, aren't we? Okay, so taking round 1 is Andy C.
Oh yeah, I just wanted to follow this up. It should have been a line chart. That's the line I used to convince you all. Back in 2016, I wrote an article for the Huffington Post saying it should have been a line chart. It is an invocation of what I call Cotgreve's law. And that says, the longer an innovative visualization exists, the probability that somebody says it should have been a bar or a line chart increases to 1. Bar chart races are really cool. I think they will have a fad, but this is one of the most frustrating things I see in data visualization. Something cool comes along and someone goes, it should have been a line chart. But anyway, I just did it. Right. So, hence the fact that we don't necessarily believe what we're saying.
Okay, so is everyone ready for round 2?
Yeah.
Excellent. So round 2, we have the last 10 years of discourse has not moved the field forward. And to kick us off, we're going back again to Mr. Cotgreve himself,
Right.
who is arguing for.
In fact, I was just saying to Andy Kirk just before we started, I was congratulating him on his best of the tablet, best of the visualization web blog post, which he then said had been going for 10 years. And I'm going to argue that the last 10 years have not moved discourse forward. Continue. All right, I'm going to read you out a quote. If you know the answer to this question, don't shout it out. But if you don't know, the question is, what year was this quote written? Here we go. It says, millions of dollars are spent annually on the collection of data in the assumption that the possession of the data will solve the problem at hand. Millions of dollars are spent each year on the collection of data. What year, for those who have not seen this before? Anybody?
1872.
1872,
75.
2019, 1980, 1926. Right. Who? Okay. This was 1914, 105 years ago, in this book, Graphic Methods for Presenting Facts by Willard Coate Britton, an absolute legend who wrote one of the first ever books on how to visualize data. That's what we've all been doing in the last 10 years. And check it out. He had 3D isometric charts. He did Iron Viz style infographics. He was showcasing cool stuff. If you wanted to do 3D balsa wood traffic flow diagrams of Frankfurt, he had the instructions for you. And here, this is cool, he had pages on how to build your plaster of Paris model to show a 3D surface model. He essentially, in this book, wrote 300 pages on everything that Andy Kirk and Andy Cotgreve and all the other database bloggers have been writing in the last 10 years. Nothing in the last 10 years is new. We might think we're in an age of big data, but that is supremely arrogant of us to make that assumption. In 1914, it was the age of big data. Punch cards, combined with this, the Hollerith tabulating machine, would enable you to process 3,000 records per hour. Boom! Could you imagine the insight you could get from that? The book also has this really cool picture, which I believe is the first known picture of Andy Kirk at the start of his career. Don't know about that.
First moustache.
Yeah, first moustache. This is actually Mr. Hollerith, who was in charge of this machine, and anybody who knows their history knows that that then became IBM. So actually this was the start of IBM, this machine, back in 1914. I digress. 1914, he already knew that the thing to do with pie charts and radar charts was banish them from the scrap heap. This is figure 3, this is on page 2 of the book, and he says, these things are crap. Because he knew all of that 105 years ago. As a quick interlude, the pie chart is pretty cool. It shows how we used to spend our annual income. Back in 1914, nearly 50% on food, and only about 20% on rent. sure anybody who's renting in London would probably think that is utterly different today. But he was writing this book thinking, how do we get people to visualize data? And he was also thinking, anticipating interactivity. We think the last 10 years has been the growth of drag and drop analytics, so you can move things and look at it from here and put it on top of each other and do this thing that Tableau does so well. Well, Brinton had that covered 105 years ago. All you need is a big box of index cards. On each index card you draw one measure, sales, for one period, in this case 1911. But then when you have a whole box of these, you can do interactive viewing. You can look at them one on top of the other, side by side, on top of each other, different measures, and actually do interactivity. 105 years ago! The other good thing is he described how to set up an analytics centre of excellence. Now, there's some people here who run centres of excellence. He was talking about it back then, and the great news is that not only do you need index cards, you can also have an analyst. And he says in the book, analytics is work any man of even ordinarily mental caliber can do. Hi, everybody. Yeah. So he knew what was coming, because here we all are. So this was 1914, but that was just the start of a century of books on how to visualize data. 1936, Graphs and How to Make Them by Herbert and Colton. 1969, Mary Eleanor Spear, who's something of a mystery, we don't know much about it, but she wrote loads of books on how to do data visualization. This one was from 1969. It'd be cool to know a little bit more about her, but we don't. But the point is, all of this that we've been doing in the last 10 years has been talked about before. Even creating communities like this and user groups where we can talk about data and think about it. In 1916, Brinton set up a statistical society to improve how we visualize data. The point is, over 150 years, we've had data has increased, the size of data has increased, the technology has increased, and it's just but we've always had ideas that always stay ahead. But the point is, it's always been the same. And I'll leave you with why I think we're not able to move the field forward, with a quote from this. I did an interview with Diginomica a couple of weeks ago and the article came out. Is data literacy being taken seriously enough in the UK? It is not. It should be taught as a basic skill, because many people today, outside of this room but out there in the real world, are afraid to use data. They lack the confidence because they don't have the basic literary skills to understand how to present or read data or how to have a conversation about it. Until we fix the curriculum and actually teach kids that making a 3D exploded pie chart is not a good thing. My daughter is getting rewarded for making 3D exploded pie charts at the moment. We need to teach data literacy at schools. Until we do that, every year there is going to be a new cohort of people coming out of school and out of university who have got no idea what's happened in the last 10 years and will be back saying, don't do pie charts forever and ever until that gets fixed. We've not moved forward in 10 years. Thank you.
Well, there's a sense of desperation. I don't know if you picked up on that in that. Quoting books from 1914 and quoting himself. I mean, that's a form of desperation. I think things certainly have moved on over the last 10 years, and it does certainly coincide with my entry into this field. This is my first post, this was my very first one, and it was criticising a 3D pie chart about Liverpool players' performance in a match against Tottenham in early 2010, I think it was. But back then, when I was entering this field, I felt that the field was on the fringes of society, of the mainstream. There weren't many blogs, there weren't many people writing books, there weren't many people offering training courses. Even the examples were quite limited in their volume. Andy mentioned my monthly collection of the best of. Well, back then it was dead easy, because there were only about 20 things happening every month. These days there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of wonderful, wonderful pieces. And so we've got this huge membership now. The fact that we've got an event like this, well, this would not have taken place 10 years ago. We wouldn't have had remotely this many people. And that's because you've been exposed to techniques and examples and discourse and discussion about this subject. So things have moved on. Content's definitely grown. Techniques have grown. Diversity of the field has grown. And even if discourse at times has been quite circular, covering the old issues, that's largely because people are entering the field and finding their way through this complex subject. And it's complex because there's lots of things that are imperfect and confusing, that don't have the neatness of a right and a wrong, and never and always. And I did this diagram in a talk a few years ago, and it was my attempt to sort of work out where are we as a field right now. And I feel this is a pattern that reflects the growth that we go through as individuals as we're trying to make our way from zero knowledge to something, to some capability. Whether that's mastery or expertise, it doesn't need to be that high level. But we begin with a natural desire for simplicity. We want to grab hold of things that are neat and obvious and established. We hang off the words of people like Stephen Few and Edward Tutley because they bring that kind of dogmatic language, which is important, by the way, not criticising, but they bring that dogmatic language that gives us clarity of always do this and never do that. And so we build our confidence, and we recognise that increasing confidence. But at some point, and I think this is really indicative of the last 10 years, there's a point at which you think, actually, those principles that are espoused by those types of people don't survive the real world in every context. Not wishing to quote on his t-shirt, but it depends. The dependencies that create this sort of fluidity of concepts. So we lose our confidence, we lose our sense of clarity. But then again, eventually we find this independence of thought because we expose ourselves to different views and opinions. We get exposed to blog posts, articles, we go to talks and webinars, we sit in events like this, and we recover our conviction, but it's now our own. We own that. It's not forged by following the script of other people. Theory becomes practice, talent becomes second nature. And then eventually there are always dips as new things emerge and you lose confidence. You think, how do I make a cool bar chart race? But then you find the techniques and you go from there. So I think this last 10 years, the sheer growth of volume, even if that content is not new, even if that content is not answering all the questions that we have doubts about, the sheer fact that it reinforces the uncertainties, I think, helps people to realise that there isn't some notional perfect answer out there that they're missing. Be okay to be doubtful about things. So it's quite a short response from me on this one. Sorry, let me just go back. Because I think it's just so clear that the sheer fact that you are in this room, that you guys are watching on YouTube. I hope there's somebody out there, by the way, not just my mum.
Those people.
Yeah, okay, cool. Hi, mum. The sheer fact that we're all here means that we've got that confidence to seek knowledge from other people. That we've got the confidence to doubt things, to not always just learn from one author and follow that script, that dogmatic approach forever. We're looking to find and blend talents and influences from all around. And the field has definitely provided that over this last 10 years, which I think actually is the golden age of visualisation. Laura, I hand you back the conch.
Thank you to both Andys. Please ignore the code on screen, use the previous one. Now, in classic debate style here, we've learnt tonight that the best way to find a quote to fit your position is to simply quote yourself. Just out of interest, is that going to continue all night?
I can't even remember what's on my next slide.
Excellent.
I might use it as a joke card if I need to.
Excellent. Okay, so we're going to jump out to Kahoot, unless anyone in the room has views on the last 10 years. Yes, excellent. We've got a comment at the back.
This kind of fit to both of you, but I pulled sort of the conclusion from both of you that almost to a point, Andy C, you were arguing that overall data literacy has remained the same, whereas Andy K, you seem to be arguing that the data literacy at the top end, so I would say probably those that are Tableau users, those in the room, have expanded, but it's those at the bottom, so maybe the problem doesn't lie at the top, the problem lies much more getting everyone else up to standard and not us. So I think from what I gained, the answer actually is both of you are right.
Oh.
That is going to be difficult to vote for. We're very much working working with a binary system.
And we're both nodding at your point as well, so we're not helping either.
Yeah.
But Kirk is wrong.
Okay. Any other comments from in the room? Sarah, do we have anything online? No comments. People online, if you do want to comment, please do tweet along. Or you can comment on YouTube, can't you? Excellent. Sorry. Okay. So we're going to jump to who won round 2.
Come on.
So to recap while you're voting, we had Andy Cotgreaves saying that 1914 was in fact the golden age of data viz. And Andy Kirk showing that by just being here tonight, you agree with him.
Brilliant.
We'll see.
Okay, we've got a few more votes to come in. Some people and ahhing. Got about 6 more. We've only got 3 seconds.
2, 1.
Quick. We had a few misses. I mean, that is probably a good thing, because I don't know if anyone else noticed, but Andy Cotgreaves was verging on doing himself out of a job at one point. Like, pretty much insinuating that no one needs Tableau, we just need punch cards.
It was so much easier then.
Okay, so round 3. We have static charts work just fine for executives. And up first, we've got Andy Kirk on 4.
Thank you very much. So, I am glowing after that victory, so thank you very much for that. Static works just fine. Sorry, static charts work just fine for executives. There's a real danger in the next 3 minutes. I might insult executives. So if you are an executive in the room, it's not you, it's the other ones that I'm going to talk. Executives, in my experience, on average, on balance, have limited data literacy. They have limited attention spans, limited patience, limited tolerance for things that will take time and effort. But they have often maximum clarity about what they want, what they expect, and how they want it. And I believe it's the job of the people at the next levels below that to be the filters, to not give executives the task of having to work through and manipulate and interrogate deep, rich interactives, which we know are fantastic, but not for them. I equate it to the idea of the remote control and the feature creep of the remote control, and the idea that certainly when I was given access to a TV for my granddad, you just try to eliminate confusion. You reduce it down to the core things that he needed to use, which was effectively on, off, louder, quieter, usually louder only. And so effectively this is reduced down to a very simple device. Brian Boyer, a data journalist, multi-talented mind in this field, gave this very sort of subtle tweet once. I think only about 19 people saw it, but I saw it and thought that's such a great way to position this. Make the least interactive thing that works, and often the least interactive thing that works is not interactive at all. Minimising the clicks is something that a lot of usability designers espouse as being a really important thing, to not create barriers, to not create obstacles towards the act of understanding, the act of interpreting. And so when we create interactives, we are, in some respects, abdicating responsibility and saying to the recipient, the user, I'm not going to try and make an effort to pull out the key things for you, I'm just going to give you the task, over to you, you find it. And we shouldn't be doing that for these important, high-powered, very busy, very literate in all the other ways that I didn't talk about before, people. And there's a slide missing there, so that's interesting. I must not have added it in, which is wonderful. So, what I wanted to talk about, I thought I had a prompt there for Arsenal, because one of the things that I've experienced when working with Arsenal, especially under Mr. Wenger, was although he had the appetite for everything, he wanted spreadsheets and he wanted all the download of data, to work with because he was a real kind of forensic observer of data and insights. The coaches always said, no boss, go away, let us sort this out, let us filter the information that we're gathering, because as you can imagine there are tons and tons of reports every 2 or 3 days when there's a match, bombarding Mr. Wenger, bombarding any manager of that elite level of football. And so we had to save him from himself by making things static. They could have been interactive. Tableau installed at Arsenal, they have it. But rather than give him all these clicks and all these ways to manipulate the view, it's no, let's filter the information and present to him the key insights, the key statistics, the key things that he needs. It's the job of others to deal with interactivity, to explore, to discover, and it's the job of them to then pass on static information, singular takeaways, singular insights that help those people to do their job, because sometimes they're their own worst enemy. They don't have the time to interact with all these obstacles. So my simple argument is we want to minimise the clicks, make it the least interactive thing that works, which is often to give people a static, singular display.
No. We want to minimise the work that executives do, but I think you aim low by underestimating the ability of an executive to understand their own time commitment. Our job as an analyst is to provide as much information to an executive in one single sweep of the eye to succeed. But every single successful dashboard you build will probably inspire a second level question. Why is that thing there? What happened? Our job as analysts is to anticipate as much as we can and then provide the inquisitive executive, if they have time, the ability to take that secondary level question. In other words, we need to treat executives like children and give them pop-up books. I'm going to give my executive a picture of a castle. Look at all the detail on this. There's loads of detail on this castle. My executive can see lots and lots of things about the Bailey. He can see what the people are saying. He can see that the carpenter can turn a tree trunk into a wheel. Awesome. If that's all he has time to consume, or she has time to consume, then we have satisfied at least one job. But when the executive says, I want to know what's in this barn, I might not be there to answer the question for that executive. I might be doing something more interesting instead. That's why we provide interactivity, so that I can anticipate that second level question and say, look, there's white bread for guests and brown for the servants. We have to treat executives like children. Apologies to any executives in the audience. And this is how Tableau works, right? Here's a dashboard. I'm a complete geek. I play this card game called Arkham Horror. Anybody else? True niche, right? Very data-driven. Does anybody play Magic the Gathering? Yay! Oh, look at the smile. I love it. Okay, it's a couple of Magic points, right?
These are both losing comments, Andy.
It's similar, but anyway, here's some data about that, right? A tooltip. God damn, if nothing else, the tooltip is an opportunity to tell a whole story about a single mark for the inquisitive executive. You can click on things and see timelines change. You can even put URLs in the tooltip. So if you want to go and find out about the guard dog, because I'm sure you all do, the executive of this company could go and find out about the guard dog. If they need to filter, they can break this down and slice and dice the data any way they want. Our job as analysts, your job as analysts, is to anticipate the primary questions and enable the secondary questions by giving them over 50 flats to live on every single dashboard. Interactivity is required and fundamental. Thank you.
Okay, excellent work from both Andys again. I am slightly concerned that they are determined to put themselves out of work tonight, both insulting exec, who could well want to bring in a database expert. Or could even want to bring Tableau in.
But I said some, he said all.
Yeah, that is true. You also said that they were illiterate and you claimed that they were all children. So, if you are an exec, we don't always insult you. Please do come back. Okay, so we're going to jump to questions on the floor or comments. Rebuttals are always welcome. That is a resounding silence. Okay, so over to Kahoot we go. As I click next, I'm going to remind you that Andy Kirk started off by saying that execs are like the grandparents of the office. You've got to minimise the clicks and minimise what they actually see. They don't need to see everything, they just need the key insights. While Andy Cockgreave thinks they're all children who are inquisitive and, given the time, should be able to investigate themselves so that he can go off and play some card games that I've never heard of. Okay, we've got 4 seconds left. A few more people not yet voted. Okay, Andy Cockgreave has clinched it, so we're now 2-1. But don't worry, we've got plenty more rounds to go. We have had a comment from the audience that there should be a none of the above.
What?
I feel like you're not doing yourself.
You said false.
Very true, very true. Okay. So round 4, can Andy Kirk draw level? We've got, what's the most influential thing to change in a default viz?
I think it's me.
How is it?
I think, well, let's see what happens.
Yes, Andy Cockgreave,
Oh,
you're
yeah.
up.
Now you're all familiar with data about Arkham Horror. Here's a bar chart showing the most popular cards in the game. Right, you have to change, before anything else, the words and the characters on a slide. Bar chart. Who can read that? Hands up if you can read that word. Oh, quite a lot of you. Okay. Can anybody not read it? Hey, at least I've got some old people with bad eyes. Right. First thing you've got to do is make fonts big enough. Right. Anytime you're designing font for anything, is the font readable? Right. So first thing you do is make it big enough. Right. People can't read your letters. That's useless. So that's fine. But then, well, Tableau's defaults are kind of a bit clunky. The axes don't really default. So now we've got to think, how do I use fonts on an axis to make things less cluttered and reduce the cognitive load? I change the tick marks so that there are fewer fonts and fewer letters. Next, I have to put a title on this. Without a title, it's just a bar chart with some words that make no sense to anybody who doesn't play this nerdy game called Arkham Horror. I mean, granted, that still doesn't reveal much insight to people who don't play this nerdy game called Arkham Horror, but at least with a title, anybody can look at your chart and get some idea of what you are showing. Without that, your chart is just a bunch of marks on a canvas that could mean anything. The tooltip, as I've already, I love tooltips. They're amazing. There's loads of marks on here, but you can tell a story. I noticed in an inaccurate failure, I actually put colour on this tooltip. Should have made it. Should have. I know. So slight fail. Don't mark me down for that. Or maybe you should. I don't know. But the tooltip is a chance to tell a story about every single mark. Really fundamental to every single viz you ever build in Tableau. Once you've done that, now, Andy Kirk, you can add colour. Thank you.
Well, I mean, he's obviously wrong. And the reason why he's wrong is because he's focused on quite a narrow slice of the design anatomy of any visualization. And I've got quite a short rebuttal to this because, simply put, irrespective of what your visualization is, every single pixel carries a colour property. Whether it's the bars, the axes, the tick marks, the labels, the backgrounds, the titles, every single thing, even if it is effectively blank, is the choice. And you are in control of that choice. So although there are words, and yes, I respect font changes, I respect words, I respect headings and all those kind of things, you're not entirely wrong, Andy. You're not entirely wrong. But the biggest difference maker, I think, is how we can colour every single pixel to convey data values effectively and to also create functional decoration. All these apparatus items, the background, the introduction text, the labels, all these things have a property of colour, so very simply, it is The simple argument for me is that colour has the broadest influence because everything has a colour. And that's it. It is just the answer.
Also not things that you are before.
I know, but I was just saying. Good point.
Yeah, very good point.
Just one thing. We apologize for the heat. I know it's getting really warm. It's just because the tableau and the building, they turn off the aircon about 7 o'clock. So apologies.
The building does that.
Yeah. So we're going to flip out to the vote now. So we had a very short debate here. Some would argue won by the audience. But we do have a binary system going, so please can you all vote for either Andy Kirk or Andy Cochrane. I apologise, the audience are the true winners here. So we've got either make the font bigger and make it legible, give the context in the tooltips, or the fact that every pixel carries colour. And so by default, you are changing the colour. Oh, we're getting fewer votes on this one.
God damn it. Wow. It still only counts as one.
Can I ask you a technical question actually on that note?
Yeah.
Are we talking about aggregate victories or are we talking about round victories?
Yeah, this is just a round victory.
Yeah.
So we are at 2-2 at this point.
Yeah.
Okay.
Shouldn't we have a bar chart race for this? We should have a bar chart race, yeah.
We should have, we missed a trick.
We could, yeah.
Okay,
What's next?
so round 5, is everyone feeling ready for round 5?
Bring it on.
I mean, the two debaters are ready, so we're going to go for it. Next up, we have data viz, art or science. Andy Kirk.
So these are the fast rounds, so these are only short arguments. Is data viz art or science? Well, I did a quick bit of research earlier and I found this definition of art. And that opening line I think is just really the sealer of this round actually. Art in its broadest sense is a form of communication. I don't know if I need to say anything more than that, to be honest. But it's an art because, of course, there are scientific elements. But the dominant mindset, I believe, when we're creating visualization is subjectivity. It's our judgment calls about what to include, what to exclude. There's no rule book for layout. There's no rule book for things that you should always show people out of a given data set. It is down to you. It's the art form of being the craft of being an analyst. So, although I do understand that this is not the only way to look at visualization, I think it is the dominant perspective. There are so few rights and wrongs. Going back to the discussion earlier about the kind of journey of conviction. Initially, yes, you hang on to the science, those nice rigorous principles. But as you mature in your skill set, that's when the art creeps in and takes over. And you have that faith that your own talent can see you through the correct judgments when they're required. So, very simply for me, art in its broadest sense is a form of communication. Let's see how we can do with that one without talking about magic cards.
Art is the icing on the cake of science. Without science, none of it would happen. I've just been dinged by colour being a pre-attentive attribute. Fair point. I accept the defeat in the previous point. But pre-attentive attribute, that is the fundamental that we have to learn about communicating with data. That's one of the fundamentals. Length, colour, size, shape, angle, movement. That is all scientific basis. As we understand the psychology of communication, the psychology of how art is consumed, we understand the cognitive science about how the eye and the brain have disconnects with inattentive blindness and all those other things. It is all science-based. Without science, we would have data visualization, and this is not a criticism of David McCandless, but we would just have David McCandless's books, Information is Beautiful and Knowledge is Beautiful. They are amazing books. I love them. But that is one spectrum where if you just have art, you are not creating something which is analytically useful for business audiences, or even for the lay people audience. The bar chart race, awful fidget spinner thing that it is predicated on the science of understanding length and watching movement, which is science-based. Without science, we could not create art. Science is the fundamental part of data. Thank you.
Okay, do we have any strong views in the audience? Excellent.
I'm afraid I'm going to have to disagree with Andy Cochran there. You could, of course, the scientific component of data viz is important, but so is the scientific component of any art form. So understanding how pigments work, understanding shape, form, perspective, these are all geometry or chemistry or anything like that. The scientific component is important, but it is not the essence of what we are doing.
All right.
Oh my gosh. Do we have anyone else in the audience? We've got one at the front and one at the back.
Although it seems so close. So Andy Kirk, you mentioned that this is an art, and that we perfect our art the more we visualize data. But then in that process, don't we then also create a set of rules for ourselves that then dictate how we then proceed based on what we've learned? And then doesn't that become a science within itself?
Yeah, that's a fair point. What I would say is that I would perceive it not so much as rules as more of a framework for thinking, that within that you've got then the flexibility to respond to nuance and context and all the... I'm reluctant to say that it depends, but all the it depends on any task that you face in. The difference of people, because people are recipients and people are rubbish. People are inconsistent.
People are rubbish!
Everybody! Exactly to every single person.
People are inconsistent, irrational, they have blind spots, prejudices, so you've got to deal with these inconsistencies of human traits, and that's where I do feel that art dominates the recipe.
We want everyone to come back, Andy.
Oh, these people are rubbish.
These views are not our own.
Yeah.
These views sit purely with the Andys.
But Andy, isn't the iteration of trial and error fundamentally the scientific method?
It doesn't feel like that when I'm doing that. Probably.
That's fine. I think there's a strong correlation of people who think data is an art and people who like and use 3D pie charts.
Okay, so we're going to go to the voting now. So to summarise, we had art in its broadest sense is a form of communication, or that the fundamentals of visualisation is based in science. We've had quite a few comments from the audience that show them to be either one way or the other. There might have been quite a large vote for it depends in this round. Any last votes coming in?
Thank you, team.
So that was the closest
I
one.
suspect the
so
people are
far.
rubbish might have lost the crucial 3 people I needed.
Yeah, the personal attacks are not going well. Okay, so it's 3-2 to Andy Cotgrave. We are up to round 6 now.
Not 20, no, not 20.
No, don't worry. I went big. Good. But don't worry, we're not going to stay all night. Round 6 is long form or single screen.
That's me. This is the penultimate round, and the last one is short. I've got Pablo. Oh, I guess I've got 1 vote in the bag already. Long form or single screen. Ladies and gentlemen, it's 2019. We no longer spend most of our time in front of a laptop. We spend most of our time in front of one of these. This is how we operate in the world. We scroll with our thumbs. It is a very natural process just to go up, down, up, down, up, down. That is how we consume the world. Data visualizations fit perfectly on here, and they even create a sense of time as you scroll through. Therefore, long form is the way forward. That's it.
Thanks, genuinely thanks for that, Andy. Well, clearly that's not the case. So nothing annoys me more, well there's plenty of things that annoy me actually, but one thing that annoys me a lot is reading articles that have this new fashion of what is known, I've got this written down, the delayed lead, L-E-D-E, where articles are open up with 3 paragraphs of flowery backstories, anecdotes before they get to the point. And it frustrates the hell out of me. And I think it's this new era whereby there's almost this kind of this laziness that comes with the endless, infinite space that is afforded by websites and apps. We're not bounded by the physical limitations of print as much as we were. And this, in a sense, it goes back to the discussion about the executives. Long form is giving people so much to process and make sense of and formulate. We're giving people a where's Wally problem when really we just need to say, there's Wally. There he is, here's the answer, here's the thing, let's move on. Let's not be inefficient, let's not be wasteful with people's precious time, let's cut to the chase. And so a single screen view is really, really important, and I think it's really where the purest form of visualization in infographic design comes in, where you have constraints, because constraints bring focus. Constraints bring innovation. Innovation is creativity in the face of obstacles. This is not trying to kind of pull out the negativities of this, and in fact it doesn't quite show it. This is a pair of articles about the same thing in the Washington Post, the print article and the web article. The print article is bounded by this limitation of space, and it therefore requires a much more incisive judgment from the authors, the creators, of what to include and what to exclude, what to make important, what to make less important. On the web version, it goes on and on and on. You scroll and scroll and scroll, and there are tons of interesting bits of information, but you've lost that focus, because the temptation has been to throw it all in there, to say, actually, they might find this interesting and this interesting. So, to my mind, a single static view is about focus. It's about editorial commitment. It's about having the courage to say, we think this is the rationale for why this is most important for you to spend your precious time. We're not going to overload your task, we're going to give you what you need. So single screen is far more superior than long form.
Can I just say, I love how I gave the single screen answer and Andy Kirk gave the long form answer. Just to confuse the whole thing.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Okay, do we have questions, comments, rebuttals?
Isn't this the classic case of it depends on the story you're trying to tell with the data?
Surely not. So, in case you haven't worked out, this is the t-shirt I'm wearing, right? Every year we've done this, we've tried to ban it depends, because that's no fun, is it? So we're banning that.
Can we have that as answer?
No, this is a binary vote. You've got to make your decision. But yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think, was it Andy Kirk who did the single screen?
Yes.
I think you compared a bad use case of long form with a good use case of single screen. That's an unfair comparison. And I think the where's Wally goes against your point. It's incredibly difficult to find where Wally is on a single screen. You can make a single screen messy. Your constraint, you can zoom out and make your constraints less constraining. As well as in a long form, you can focus your long form as well. So I think it's an unfair comparison when you've done the bad version of long form against the good version.
Ouch.
I'll take your feedback on board.
Is anyone else starting to think that we should crowdsource the debate next time?
Anyone else?
Let's just get it over. We've got to see what these numbers are.
I think Dave is desperate.
Going to make a long form infographic of the results of the debate.
Okay. So round 6 was long form or single screen. We had some interesting views. Again, probably won by the audience here. But in true debate style, there can only be one winner of this round. We've got most answers. You all to get. You've not yet voted, you've only got 3 seconds. Who's going to win?
Yay!
Oh, by a long way.
I'm not going to lie, I'm really pleased that you all voted this way, because otherwise it would make round 7 a bit pointless. And you're in for a treat, is all I'll say. So, round 7 is defend the indefensible. And I will say that the views that are about to be shared with you are firmly held by no one. Submitted by Greg on Twitter. And thank you so much, Greg. I really hope you're watching this. Pie charts, 3D or exploding.
You're going to flip a
We're going
coin.
to flip a coin. I don't have a coin.
Oh, God. Cashless society. Does anybody have a coin?
It's true.
Well, how are you going to do this?
You flick and it goes.
Okay, heads.
Can't believe it.
So what if it's heads? What if it's all I choose?
Yeah.
Yeah. It is tails.
Oh, you choose.
Oh crap. I'm going to go for exploding.
So 3D's first, right?
Is it?
No contest! No contest. Data visualization can be defined in a Stephen Few manner where you say it is about purity of vision and accurate insight and boring as hell. Goddamn Stephen Few, I was your follower for many years until I realised that sometimes people just need to see the gist of the data. And sometimes people just need to be engaged with the data by looking at this beautiful thing. Look at it, it's shiny, it's glided, and if I really just want to convey to you that, you know what, the red thing is the biggest thing, the 3D is fine.
It's not great, is it? It's not great at all. And the only way to treat something like this is to blow it up, is to explode it, to separate it from its core. You can still read it. You can still judge those angles. Even if they're not part of this harmony of a central origin, they're still visible. You can still judge their angle and their size. They are still perceivable. And they're not junk. They're not trapped in the 1995 era. We've all made 3D pie charts because they were available, but not because they were good. Explain pie charts. Focus. Let's look at these two things. We want to see those. We're creating hierarchy. We're creating attention for the audience. We're making it quicker to get access to the insights. They're wonderful. Thank you very much.
Okay, do we have any fans of 3D or exploding pie charts? No. Yes, yeah. Does anyone want to comment on pie charts? No. Summed up perfectly. Okay, so I genuinely think you're all just waiting to see who we crown as champion. And that is fair. So we're going to start voting.
You can crown a winner.
Come on, get your answers in. Is it either how to lie with statistics, or is it how to separate the view and no longer really have a pie chart? Oh, we've got a few indecisive numbers.
Yeah.
Ticking up. I feel tense.
I feel.
Oh, yay!
Well done, Mr. Chairman.
For the first time in 24 hours, the red team take it.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all so much. And can we say a huge thank you and round of applause to our two debaters for this evening. Go all night.
So I'm going to sit down now.
Yeah,
Right.
thank
I'll
you ever so
fly
much.
with my fidgets.
Well, before we wrap this evening up, does anyone have any questions for the two Andys or one of the two Andys? It doesn't have to be debate related. We will open the floor. They weren't prepared for this. Excellent.
Just out of interest, how much or how many of the propositions that you've just argued were you actually in favour of?
Bar chart races, right, so bar chart race.
3D
I
bar
have
chart.
built some bar chart races for my nerdy Arkham Horror board game community. They've gone viral within that little community because people love them.
Comment from the audience saying that's 3 likes.
Ouch! No, I tell you what, I've been writing Arkham Horror data analytics posts on gravyanecdote.com. Each one of those has gotten about 7 or 8 times. Oh, actually, you can still. I'm still getting massive engagement. Yeah, but you can still say going from 3 to 10.
I think I agree with most things I've said, as it kind of getting clear. Apart from pie charts, yeah. Single screen, yeah, I mean, it depends, does absolutely depend on the single screen versus long form. I don't think I would be as emphatic about data viz being an art. I think it has to be both. I mean, there's no two ways about it. I mean, you can certainly argue for both cases being dominant, but biggest change I think I agree with in terms of colour, because everything does have a colour. Statics, again, it depends, but I do think most occasions statics work better than interactive. So I feel like I've spoken from the heart actually. So, but Andy does say previously that he does like 3D pie charts. So.
Did anyone manage to get a photo of them in front of those, by the way? 'Cause that's probably going to be worth
that's probably a good thing.
a little bit in bribery.
Yeah. Bar chart races. The last 10 years, I do find a lot of what we're talking about has been talked about before. You know, this idea that with data grows like this, the tools we have grows like this, and the ideas that those enable us to have grow ahead of the data and technology growth we have. So I think the ideas and capacity we have as a society grows, but the problems are still the same. And I do passionately believe we need to change the curriculum. I think that's a really big problem. What else did we talk about? Executives. Static charts are really good, but it's not hard to add. Interactivity.
All I would say,
are we still going?
But all I would say sorry, after you wrote it. All I would say to continue that point is that we were able to run society and businesses before computers. So. Back in 1940,
yeah. When you started,
when you could be some wonderful balsa wood graphics.
I'll stop there. Yeah. Right, good question.
Yeah, thank you very much. Anyone else? Questions? Comments?
Do you need a shower after that pie chart debate?
Yeah, I need a shower. It's so damn hot in here. I need a shower anyway, but certainly I feel fairly dirty and soiled after arguing 3D pie charts. That was my point.
Have you still got a job after that?
Oh, well, we'll see. There's only a few employees in here, so we'll see if we get back.
I'm freelance, I'm screwed.
Yeah.
And we stopped the recording, by the way, on the
Okay,
This is going to be a bit strange. I am an executive. I thought I'd just share some thoughts that we thought might be quite interesting. I disagree completely with the last point you just made, Andy, about the fact that we used to run businesses before, because actually using the stuff that I think the majority of the rest of the room do will make us run businesses more efficiently and in a better way. And the argument about static stuff, I sort of agree with at the point that we're at now, but actually if we use the other techniques that you're talking the point about the 10 years and the point about the data, the bar chart races. Those are kind of like a gateway drug. Those are things that get people interested in this space without giving them a line graph that they then have to interact with and use and understand how they use it. And that could be quite interesting. You start educating them with that, and then you can move on to more complex ways of showing data.
Yeah, and I think you possibly, this is a little bit backtrack, but you possibly support my point because clearly you are data literate because you're here and you're interested and you've got the capacity.
It's too late now, Anthony.
No. I need to walk out of the building and not be. But yeah, I think it's a fair point. But I have encountered some dinosaurs that do need just something printed and nothing more. They're not in the room though.
Okay, in which case we will wrap up this evening.
Yeah, that's fine.
David.
Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you so much.
Once again, to the Andes and being good sport and sharing with us a lot of their opinions. So thank you. I just wanted to tell you thank you for coming and to announce that the next UC group is going to be here again on the 30th of May. I know it's kind of a short window, but holidays and all of that. So 30th of May, we're going to have someone that's speaking at DC in Berlin is going to do a kind of a preview before for you, and then we'll have also Towan joining us to showcase some of the work that's been done doing with Data.Magic. So we're looking forward to see you in about 3 weeks' time. Have a great evening. Bye-bye.
Enjoy.
Connor, who was pretending to be